I spent more and more time with Jade, who often fought with her mother as a teenager, while I quietly strengthened the bonds we had. I appreciated it all the more because I was well aware of how easily it could all end. It was definitely cheaper to keep her. If we separated, I doubt I could afford to own my own property. And on top of that, I would have to do all the shopping, cooking, and cleaning. Moreover, I have had intimate relationships with many attractive women that I would never have approached as a single guy. I would have preferred fidelity and a monogamous relationship, but this seemed like the best way out of the situation. I didn't love Joe as much as I used to, but our relationship was quite good. Although I began to miss the deep connection with someone special, Joe was no longer that person to me. Jade was already 13, and I just needed to last a few more years. Then I started talking to a couple in their early 30s named Megan and Ian. The conversation was comfortable and friendly, and we ended up exchanging several photos of ourselves in clothes. The couple were stunning. Megan was elegant and very pretty with curly red hair, and Ian looked quite fit. Ian was friendly and interesting, while Megan was quite calm, perhaps a little shy. We agreed to meet at a restaurant and see how things were going. Joe got ready by wearing a tight little black dress that showed off her figure. I was a little surprised by the choice of outfit and assumed it was quite revealing. She insisted that she wanted to look decent and that she needed high-heeled shoes, since Ian was very tall. We walked into an upscale bar and saw them in a quiet booth, smiling, greeting each other like old friends, and hugging each other. Ian was wearing a suit that matched my jeans and shirt. Seeing Megan in person took my breath away. The computer screen did not convey all her beauty. She was wearing a midnight blue dress that seemed to shimmer in the streetlights, not too revealing, and mid-heeled heels. Her highlighted red hair was a mass of curls and pins, but it looked completely natural. Maybe Joe is right about the outfit. Lots of smiles and confirmation that we are glad to finally meet. We exchanged the first few small phrases about how we found this place. We ordered a couple of bottles of wine, and while I tried not to look at Megan too obviously, Ian looked at Joe more openly. The conversation continued. Everyone admitted that they had hardly thought about anything else all week. I can't believe we got along so well. It's more casual than I thought. It feels like we've been friends for a long time. The last thing we need is for you guys to be on edge. The others agreed with my remark. I saw the way Joe looked at Ian. If anyone didn't like the state of things, she seemed fascinated by him. And it wasn't long before she went into full flirting mode. Megan bit her lip. It was a nervous gesture, but it drew my attention to her rather full lips. Between the bar and the restaurant, there was a dance floor with music playing, and I asked Megan if she wanted to dance. She looked at Ian, who nodded in agreement. At the same time, he stood up and extended his hand to Joe. She smiled and took it without even looking in my direction. I remember very well our first touch, when Megan took my hand and I looked into her eyes. My heart jumped slightly, as did my groin. I put my other hand around her waist. "Everything is fine?" Megan just smiled and nodded in response as we began to move slowly to the music. I saw that she was nervous, so I continued chatting. "By the way, I like your dress. It's very elegant." "Thank you. I hoped you would like it. It took me forever to choose. I was aiming for sexuality, not promiscuity and all that." "Well, I would say that you did it. You look elegant and stylish." Megan surprised me by explaining that this was the first time they had met like this. Their interest was sparked by meeting old college friends, drinking a lot, which led to some flirting, but they didn't go through with it. Ian wanted to explore and experiment and convinced Megan to give it a try. I felt there was more to it, but I didn't want to pry too much too soon. "Would you mind if I held you closer to me, Megan?" "No, and you can call me Meg. Everyone else does that." "Okay. Why don't you put your hands on my shoulders?" When she did this, I ran my hands along her petite waist. "What do you think?" "It's nice, Phil. I like being around you." I bit my lip again. "Just try to relax, Meg. I'm not going to do anything that will make you uncomfortable. Tell me if I do, and we'll work it out." "Thank you, Phil. It means a lot. I want to trust you." and this is a great way to start something I hope is special. I hugged her and forgot about Joe and Ian for a while. Lost in the moment, I wanted to kiss her, but I resisted the urge. It felt too early, and I hoped it would be something to look forward to. We looked at each other and saw Ian and Joe kissing. His arms were also a little lower. I was amazed at how little I cared. I never felt the same after her cheating, and even if we could get over it, her attitude made that impossible. Meg looked up at me. "How do you feel seeing them kiss?" I expected to feel jealous, but no. I think it's because you're in my arms. Meg smiled back. "You're too cute." This is probably what worried me the most all week. I never doubted that I liked you, but I thought that jealousy could become insurmountable, but it did not. It's like a regular date, which is what I like, but with an extra twist of excitement. More than just exciting. For me, it's the same. I don't mind because we're together. I pulled her a little closer to me, enjoying the closeness of her body, and let my hands slide to the back of her thighs, trying to avoid grabbing her ass, and feeling her breasts meet my chest as we continued to almost dance. Ian and Joe slid towards us. "Are you guys okay?" I let Meg answer. "Yes, everything is fine. You guys are a great couple." I felt proud when Ian said that. For some reason, I really liked that we were called a couple. Meg turned to me. "I can't agree more. I think so too." We sat back in the booth while Ian and Joe continued dancing. I leaned over to chat with her over the music, our faces naturally close. She leaned over and kissed me tenderly, her lips so soft and her perfume so intoxicating. The feeling was electric, like the first kiss in school, exciting and nervous. Meg gasped softly, and I continued the kiss, not caring where we were. I liked her gentle answers and the sensations they evoked. I became more and more passionate and pulled her towards me, not caring where we were and unable to stop. My mouth opened completely. Her taste was so sweet and hot that I moaned. We finally broke the kiss, both panting, her breasts slamming against me and me completely tense. "Wow, this is so unusual, thank you." "I'm serious, there's no rush. We can move at the pace that suits you. We don't have to follow them." "I know. We'll just do our own thing." We looked at each other and saw Joe looking at us and Ian saying, "Wow." Meg looked at him and blushed, pressing her face to my chest. I heard muffled, "Looks like they saw everything." Probably, yes, we were a little late. "Do you feel awkward because of this?" "No, and you?" "Not one bit, and I don't want to let you go." Ian and Joe joined us, and we continued talking about friends, family, travel, and work. Time flew by, confirming that we had a lot in common and a connection. Ian interrupted his hesitation. "Would you guys like to have a nightcap with us, or can we do it another time if it seems too hasty?" Joe looked excited, and I looked at Meg, who nodded, biting her lip again, and said, "How about we come back and see how it goes? No promises?" "Yes, quite fair. Any of us can stop at any time." Joe added with a laugh, "Why don't we swap partners for the duration of the trip so that no one gets lost?" "Sure, sounds like a good plan." I offered Meg my hand, she took it, and I led her out of the bar, my stomach shaking with excitement and some anxiety. Joe and Ian followed me, holding hands. I noticed that the waitress was looking at us with raised eyebrows and a smile. I opened the car door for Meg, feeling strange but excited as I took the opportunity to inspect her. Her dress rode up on her hips, and I noticed her very slender legs covered in nylon. I looked back and saw Ian's hand on Joe's ass as he walked her into the car. I got into the car and, unable to resist, leaned over to kiss her, wondering what I would get, her cheek or her lips. She turned and kissed me tenderly on the lips. We started the engine and drove off, seeing that Ian had followed us. "Are you happy with this evening, Meg?" "Yes, everything was wonderful, more comfortable than I expected. But that doesn't mean I'm still not scared. I would say that you shouldn't be afraid, but I'm afraid myself. You're very attractive and I like your company. Just remember that everything is under control." She giggled and reached out to squeeze my hand. "I like it. Thank you. You make everything simpler. I had so many doubts. I think Ian and Joe hit it off too. After a short drive, we arrived and walked into their home, shared some wine at the breakfast bar, and then settled into the living room. I was glad that Meg decided to sit next to me. We talked for a bit. I kept glancing at Meg. She really has an amazing figure. When I looked back, Ian's hand was on Joe's thigh, and he moved in for a kiss. I decided to do the same with Meg and started kissing. It didn't take long before Ian led Joe out. Meet me for breakfast at 9 in the morning. Not just sex, but a sleepover. I was more than happy with the prospect of spending the night with Meg and agreed. Meg also nodded in agreement. I began to kiss her more and more often, unable to stop, and then she began to have serious jitters. You are, of course, a good guy, but I'm not sure I can do this. I was disappointed, but I replied, It's okay, Meg. You should be absolutely comfortable with what we're doing, and you should be sure that this is exactly what you want. Then we heard the unmistakable sound of the bed creaking upstairs and knew what it meant. With these words, Meg took a deep breath, stood up, offered her hand, and led me upstairs. As we walked past one of the bedrooms, I heard my wife moaning. Meg led me into the bedroom, which was clearly the master bedroom. She deftly unzipped the back of her dress and let it fall. I was mesmerized. In black high heels, a blue transparent bra and thong, she looked like a vision. Her skin was so tight and perfectly porcelain. I remembered to close my mouth so that the staring would not be so noticeable, but she got it. So you like what you see? I more than like it. You are stunning. Well, it looks like I got your attention, now it's your turn. I tried to be cool and courageous, but I felt rushed and awkward, and it took me no more than a few seconds to undress. Meg looked me up and down, and I felt myself blush. That's very nice. Looks like I'll get a better deal. I was delighted by this remark and went up to her to kiss her. The shy housewife turned out to be a sexy goddess, and I wanted more and more. We took a moment to recover before having sex again, rolling around and trying different positions. We were awakened by the sound of the head of the bed hitting the wall in the next room. Ian and Joe were obviously getting to know each other again. It was strangely erotic and had an immediate effect on us. Meg was more than happy to get the same thing as Joe. Breakfast turned into casual conversation after the ice was broken. We exchanged opinions without going into too much detail. It looked like Joe and Ian were having a good time too, and we agreed to meet again. For 6 months, I continued to meet with Ian and Meg, and I thoroughly enjoyed each meeting. Joe started asking if I had feelings for Meg. I denied, saying it was just a coincidence. In the end, Ian said they wouldn't date us anymore because he thought Meg and I were too close. I didn't argue, admitting to myself that I had fallen in love, and that, if possible, I would switch places with Joe in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, that's where it all ended. 4 months had passed since our last meeting when Joe, out of the blue, said that Ian and Meg had invited us to a party. Apparently, it was a party thrown by a couple they met online. They weren't sure about it and wanted to have friends there in case it got too crowded. Yes, we didn't like parties. We agreed that we would only change with other couples, no orgies, groups, or singles. But I wanted to see Meg again, and I agreed to go. Joe was very interested in the idea, adding that she was interested in what such parties entailed and that they could open up new opportunities. I was pleasantly surprised when we entered the hangout, which was a large and secluded private home. The party was a casual affair with drinks and a meet and greet. The owners introduced us to some of the regulars. They all seemed nice people, but there was no sign of Ian or Megan. Joe started hanging out with a guy named Jeff. He was young and handsome, and she seemed to like him. They went into the bar, and I chatted with the owners and was introduced to another couple. 20 or 30 minutes had passed when Joe returned and said she was going upstairs to get to know Jeff better. Wait a second, this is not part of our agreement, remember? He is single, and we only exchange with couples. But it's a party. Hell no, we still stick to our boundaries. I could see she was annoyed and wondered if she couldn't just go anyway. But then I saw her shake her head slightly at her future lover across the room. By the time Ian and Meg arrived, she had calmed down a little. I noticed that Meg was wearing a dress that was very revealing for her, short and low-cut. She looked impressive, but of course she did not feel comfortable. Ian was as gregarious as ever, but Meg looked depressed and awkward, and I decided that this was not going to be a party she or I would enjoy. It wasn't long before Ian led Joe towards the bar again, leaving Meg and me. We chatted, but she seemed preoccupied. The conversation was strained, lacking the warmth of our previous meetings. Would you like to go away, just go for a ride without any obligations? Maybe get some fresh air? She looked so relieved, and then she burst into tears. I tried to calm her down, asking what happened. Ian wants me to try a special kind of sex, with a few guys. I don't want this, but Ian is very insistent on it, and insists that we come to the party. I only agreed when Ian said you would be here. I knew that you wouldn't want me to do anything that made me uncomfortable. Wait, this doesn't make sense. Why would Ian invite me, knowing that I would refuse? It dawned on us both at the same time. Meg spoke first. Maybe he had something planned for Joe. They were texting to agree. We went looking for them, but they weren't in the bar, and I turned to Meg, shaking my head. Looking at my watch, I realized that at least 45 minutes had passed since they left together. I quickly ran up the stairs and was already moving along the corridor when Joe came staggering out of the bedroom door, trying to straighten her dress, and we almost collided. The door was open, and I saw Ian and Jeff inside. At least she had the decency to look embarrassed. I stared at her in rage. Is this my fault too, Joe? This is my body, and I will do whatever I want with it. Don't be shy, but I'm leaving. I turned on my heels, passed Meg on the stairs, and headed towards the exit. I heard the click of heels behind me as I walked down the stairs and across the tiled hallway. I turned to tell Joe exactly where she could go, but I saw Meg looking back at me. She was in a panic. Her eyes were wide. Can I go with you? I looked up at the landing and saw a third man leading into Joe's bedroom with two others. I nodded to Meg and turned to leave. The trip was calm. We talked a little about what we were going to do and came to the conclusion that both Ian and Joe were narcissistic assholes. In my case, I thought that Joe would always try to win and would not accept any balance in our relationship. Meg's assessment was more blunt. Ian is just a jerk. This made me laugh. Exactly the level of personal analysis that I could understand and for which I did not need a consultant. Can I take you home? I'm not very fond of company. Only if everything is fine with you alone, and if you take me to my mother. I don't want to see Ian anytime soon. I left her, promising to stay in touch, and returned to the house alone, acutely aware of the silence and darkness. Joe returned home the next day. I didn't know if she would try to argue or apologize. Don't even worry, Joe. It's all over between us. Why? It's just sex. We've done it with dozens of people. What's the difference? I've had enough 3 guys all night long. You seem to be saying that you can always get more. By the way, you are right about this. You are attractive. Many men want you. You won. Congratulations. She seemed to be barely able to contain her smile. Sorry, I was upset because you ruined my fun with Jeff. Nonsense. You and Ian arranged everything. Used Megan to distract me while you both got what you wanted. It's always the same with you. You are like a spoiled child, and it is never enough. You need to go to the clinic and get checked. I won't touch you again. Joe didn't take my leaving very well. She started stalking me and didn't allow me to see Jade. At one point, she tried to force her way into my parents' house where I was staying, ranting about how I was treating her badly. I tried to kick her out without using force. Fortunately, my mother showed no restraint. She slapped her and literally threw her out, adding, "You need help, Joe. I'm not sure you're healthy." This remark provoked another barrage of insults from Joe. I gave Joe money for Jade, but she referred me to the child support agency. I couldn't help but laugh when they told me I had to pay her less, and she got so angry that she threatened the manager and got a police warning. I went to pick up Jade, but Joe said she was with her friends. I was stunned to see Richard Askew emerge from the living room calm as a cucumber. What the heck? Like I said, if you leave me, Richard will be here, and here he is. Soon, he will take me upstairs. Again. I turned to Richard, who had a smug look on his face. I was definitely going to beat the crap out of him. And then, I remembered Dr. Taylor's warning from many years ago. Maybe it's a setup, a trap. Joe hated losing at anything, and if I got arrested for assault, Joe would keep Jade like everything else. Surely she wouldn't go that far? Would she? Joe continued, I'm sure Richard will be a wonderful father for Jade. He will be only too happy to adopt her. Finally, I noticed that her phone, partially hidden on the shelf, was undoubtedly recording. I laughed, almost hysterically. Nice try, Joe. But I won't touch a single hair on his rich little head. You are something special, and you both truly deserve each other. By the way, does Richard know that you had sex with several guys at the same time and without protection? Richard almost choked. As I left, I casually added, better sign up for a sexual health clinic, mate. You don't want anything bothering you. While Joe was having sex, I received a number of offensive messages and videos. Her comments were very instructive. Look what you threw away that you could have enjoyed now. Never mind, I have a real man, and he is much better and bigger than you. I thought it was strange that she would waste time texting when she was doing so well, and I didn't care anymore as long as Jade was safe. If you give me Jade, you will have more time to have fun with anyone. Although I heard that Richard moved out, so you have some space to fill, so to speak. At this point, she hung up, no doubt amazed that two men had already rejected her. The divorce was a nightmare. It dragged on longer and longer. She kept resisting and making up all sorts of nonsense about me having affairs and being abusive. She had no evidence, and some of her claims were so outlandish that the family court, social workers, and lawyers began to realize what she was all about. Anyone who disagreed with her received a barrage of insults. I realized that the Joe I lived with was just a simplified version of her. Even Joe's parents began to worry about their princess's erratic behavior, but it was also my fault, because I was the one who abandoned her. Now, at 14 years old, Jade had no choice, but the family court listened to her wishes, and she wanted to stay with me. I continued to handle most of my parenting responsibilities without missing a single event, class, or parent-teacher meeting, and turned into a teen taxi service. Joe perceived this choice as a betrayal. After all, how could you not choose her? At the custody hearing, she lost her temper. When my lawyer asked for a psychological evaluation of Joe to ensure Jade's safety, I thought Joe was going to explode. She started cursing right in the middle of the trial and completely lost her temper. She thought I was a bastard, just like my lawyer. Honestly, she might be right, but he was on my side. She was again found in contempt of court when she continued to cause problems with my access to Jade. I kept a journal and had her message chain as proof. The judge warned her that one more such incident and she would be taken into custody. At the last hearing, she lost her temper again when the judge confirmed joint custody and called him a lost old ass, for which she was prosecuted and fined. Over time, I spent more and more time with Jade. Joe seemed to have lost interest in parenting and Jade's bad behavior, although I didn't observe any of that. All I had to do was pay off another 18 months of the mortgage, and then we could sell the house, or Joe would have to buy out my share. Another thing I did was save small amounts of money over the years, and that helped a lot. The day after receiving confirmation of the divorce, my doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a red-haired vision. Hello. I guess you're not interested in dating a recently divorced and reformed girl who wants only one thing, to settle down with the right and strictly monogamous man? I think we have someone who fits that description, if you'd like to come in. The truth was that I stayed in touch with Meg, and we supported each other through our divorces. Ian seemed to be on the same path as Joe, and like Joe, he periodically asked for forgiveness, and then returned to his previous behavior. I didn't see much of Joe after that, only making a brief appearance at Jade's 16th birthday. I thought that, after such a long separation, we could have a reasonable conversation. I would consider coming back to you, Phil, if you begged. You know that I am the best thing you ever had, and don't even try to say that you don't miss me. As I left, I replied, "You're right, Joe. It would be completely pointless to tell you about this." The next time I saw her was at the station. When we saw Jade off to university, I was there with Meg. As the train pulled out, I heard Joe say to her, "I could take him away from you if I really wanted to, but I like all the other men too much, and his pride can't handle it." Meg smiled sweetly. "Oh, darling, you really are very bitter and completely out of touch with reality, aren't you?" Meg turned and took my hand, and we walked the stroller away. For all the holidays, Jade returned to me and Meg. Thanks in part to doting on my stepbrother, we actually lived happily ever after. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.